Bible is a tech manual. Part 1. The Master Engineer's Classified Operations Manual. Peace and power to the remnant. You are locked into another heavy-hitting session of Yah First Ministries with your brother Bazalel. If you are tuning in, it is because the Spirit of the Most High has dragged your ass out of the gutter of religious tradition and sat you down to hear some raw, uncut truth. Welcome back to the front lines of the information war. You know how we do it here. We do not play church. We do not tap dance for ties, and we sure as hell do not sugarcoat the word of Yahuwah to make your sensitive feelings feel better. If you wanted a soft-ass bedtime story, go find a Baptist preacher with a silk robe and a perm. But if you want the keys to the kingdom, you are in the right place. Now listen close, family, because we are embarking on a 5-part journey that is going to completely dismantle the way you look at that book on your nightstand. This episode is titled, The Bible is a Technical Manual. Over the next 5 parts, we are going to strip away the religion and look at the engineering. We are going to prove that the scriptures are not a collection of fairy tales or moral fables. They are a classified briefing, a technical specification, and an operations guide from the master engineer himself to his chosen operators, the house of Yisrael, Israel. We are going to talk about how every law is an access code, how every prophecy is a system requirement, and how the Paleo-Hebrew language is the literal source code of reality. By the time we are done with part 5, you will understand that you have been holding a nuclear reactor's manual while your pastor has been reading it like a Dr. Seuss book. The religious lie and the engineering reality. Let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. The biggest trick the serpent seed ever pulled was convincing you that the Bible is a religious book. That is absolute horse shit. Religion is a cage. Religion is a system of control designed by the heathen to keep your mind small and your spirit weak. They want you thinking about heaven and hell and being a good person, so you do not notice that the Most High handed you the blueprints to the entire damn universe. Why in the hell would the creator of the heavens and the flat earth, the one who calculated the density of the firmament and set the circuits of the luminaries, waste his time writing a storybook? He would not. He is a master engineer. When he spoke to Moshe on the mountain, he was not giving him suggestions for a better life. He was giving him the technical specs for a nation-sized machine. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why the church is so goddamn powerless? Why do these Christians pray until they are blue in the face and nothing happens? It is because they are trying to run the hardware without the manual. They are like a bunch of toddlers hitting the keyboard with a hammer, wondering why the computer would not turn on. You cannot access the power of Yahuwah through faith alone if your faith is based on a lie. You access the power through alignment. You access the power through the protocols. Look at Proverbs, chapter 25, verse 2. It is the glory of Yahuwah to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. Do you hear that? The Most High hid the data. He encrypted the files. And he did it because only a king, an awakened Israelite with the spirit of truth, has the authority to decrypt it. The heathen can read the words, but they cannot see the code. They see a story about a burning bush. We see a thermal acoustic interface. They see a story about the Red Sea parting. We see a localized gravitational inversion. They see a miracle. We see the engineer overriding the system parameters. The source code, Paleo-Hebrew, as programming language. To understand the manual, you have to understand the language it was written in. And I am not talking about that Babylonian square script bullshit they call modern Hebrew today. That is a bastardized, corrupted script from the captivity that was designed to hide the truth. I am talking about the original Paleo-Hebrew, the pictographic script that Yahuwah used to program reality. In the Sefer Yetzirah, it tells us that Yahuwah formed the universe through the 22 letters of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. This is not mysticism, you dumbass Negroes. This is computer science. Each letter is a pictograph, a shape, a number, gematria, and a function, a command. Take the word Torah. In the original Paleo, it is written Tav, a cross / sign equals mark, sign, covenant. Vav, a nail / hook equals add, secure, connect. Resh, a man's head equals head, chief, beginning. But when you look at the engineering of the word, Torah means the sign that connects the head to the revelation. It is the interface between the mind of the engineer and the physical manifestation of his will. The gematria of Torah is 411. 4 plus 1 plus 1 equals 6, the number of man. Why? Because the Torah was engineered for man, specifically the Adamic Israelite man, to govern the physical realm. If you do not follow the manual, the system crashes. And when the system crashes, people die. Not just die in some peaceful sleep, but get absolutely obliterated by the wrath of the engineer. When Israel broke the covenant, Yahuwah did not just send them a stern warning. He initiated a system wipe. Think about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. You think that was just a sad event? No, that was the engineer removing a corrupted file. The historians tell us the blood was flowing through the streets like a river. Imagine the stench of 1 million rotting corpses in the desert sun. Imagine mothers so hungry they were eating their own damn children, just like it was prophesied in the manual. You think the Most High is all love? Tell that to the babies whose heads were dashed against the stones because their parents thought they could ignore the technical specs of the covenant. Every law is a biological and spiritual protocol. You have these punk-ass preachers telling you the law is done away with. That is the most dangerous lie ever told. That is like telling a pilot the flight manual is done away with. Just fly the plane however you feel. You know what happens to that plane? It turns into a fireball and rains charred meat and twisted metal over the landscape. The laws in the Bible are not, quote, moral suggestions. They are technical protocols for the maintenance of the Israelite vessel. Take the dietary laws in Leviticus chapter 11. You think Yahuwah just hates pigs? No. He engineered the pig to be a biological waste disposal unit. A pig is a living trash can. Its digestive system is so fast, it does not filter out the toxins. It just pushes them into the fat. When you eat that shit, you are injecting biological poison into the precision machinery of your body. You are gunking up the sensors. You are short-circuiting the electrical nervous system that Yahuwah designed to receive his frequency. And what about the Sabbath? Saturday, from sunrise to sunset. Not Sunday for the sun god worshippers, and not Friday night for the fake-ass Jews. Saturday, sunrise to sunset. This is a frequency alignment protocol. Yahuwah engineered time in 7-day cycles. On the 7th day, the background radiation of the spiritual realm changes. If you are out there working, buying, selling, and chasing money on Saturday sunrise to sunset, you are out of sync with the grid. You are like a radio trying to pick up a signal on the wrong damn frequency. All you get is static. And then you wonder why your life is a mess of stress, disease, and poverty. You are redlining the engine when the manual says idle. The master engineer's blueprint. Look at the tabernacle. Look at the temple. These were not houses of worship. They were power plants. When you read the specs in Shemot, chapter 25, Yahuwah gives Moshe the exact measurements. He does not say, make it roughly this big. He gives specific cubits. He specifies the gold, the silver, the brass, the acacia wood, the skins. This is material science. The Ark of the Covenant was a gold-plated wooden box. Gold is one of the most conductive metals on the flat earth. Wood is an insulator. You have 2 layers of conductor separated by an insulator. That is a capacitor, you idiots. The Ark was a high-voltage electrical device designed to house the Shekinah. the literal plasma discharge of the Most High's presence. If you touched it without the proper grounding, the priestly garments with the bells and the pomegranate fringes, you got vaporized. Ask Uzzah. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 7 tells us Yahuwah smote him for his error. He did not just die. The Hebrew implies he was struck by a bolt of power. Imagine his flesh popping like a grape in a microwave. Imagine the smell of ozone and burnt hair as his nervous system was fried to a crisp in a microsecond. Why? Because he violated the technical safety protocols. The ark was not a holy object to be handled with good intentions. It was a piece of high-level engineering that required specific authorization and procedure. The Bible is classified intelligence. Every verse in this book is a clue. Every prophecy is a specification for a future event. The reason the nations are so terrified of the quote-unquote Negro waking up is because they know that once we realize this book is our manual, their time is up. They have spent centuries trying to keep you in the religious layer. They gave you Jesus and told you to turn the other cheek. They wanted you passive, waiting for a rapture that is never coming because no man has ascended to heaven. Not Enoch, not Eliyahu, Elijah, and certainly not your grandma. Yahusha said it himself in Yochanan, chapter 3, verse 13, and no man hath ascended up to heaven. That settles the damn debate. The serpent seed, the descendants of Cain, they know the manual. They have reverse engineered the principles of the Most High to build their new world order. They use the sacred geometry. They use the gematria. They use the feast cycles to time their rituals and their market crashes. They are using your manual to rule you while you sit in the church basement eating fried chicken and singing Kumbaya. Does that not make you sick? Does that not make your blood boil? It should. You are the operators of this reality. You are the ones who are engineered to take dominion. But you cannot take dominion if you do not know how the system works. Look at Yeshayahu, chapter 45, verse 7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, Yahuwah, do all these things. The master engineer owns the whole spectrum. He is not just the god of the good stuff. He is the architect of the entire matrix. He built the light and he built the dark. He built the blessing and he built the curse. And he gave you the manual so you can navigate the system without getting crushed by the gears. The engineering of judgment. When the manual is ignored, the fail-safe mechanisms kick in. We call that judgment. But in engineering terms, it is just a natural consequence of a system out of balance. When the flood came in the days of Noah, it was not just rain. It was a tectonic and atmospheric collapse. The windows of heaven were open, the floodgates in the firmament, and the fountains of the great deep were broken up. This was a pressurized hydraulic event. Imagine the sound of the earth's crust snapping like a dry twig. Imagine the roar of the waters from above and below, meeting with enough force to grind mountains into powder. People were clawing at the sides of the ark, their fingernails being ripped off as they tried to find a grip on the smooth, pitch-covered wood. Mothers were holding their babies above their heads until the water rose past their noses, the cold liquid filling their lungs, their eyes bulging in terror as they realized the engineer had closed the door. That is what happens when the technical manual says, the end of all flesh is come before me. It is a system-wide termination. And you think we are not approaching another one? Look at the world. The corruption is at an all-time high. The biological source code is being tampered with. The operating system of the nations is crashing. The master engineer is about to hit the reset button. And if you are not aligned with the protocols, you are going to be part of the deleted files. The access codes of the remnant. So how do we cap in? How do we use the manual to rule? It starts with the Paleo-Hebrew. It starts with understanding that every word Yahuwah spoke carries a mathematical signature. Let's look at the word for truth, emet. In Paleo Hebrew, it is aleph. Ox head equals strength, leader, first. Mem, water equals chaos, mighty, blood. Tav, cross/sign equals covenant, seal, end. The word emet starts with the first letter of the alphabet and ends with the last letter. It spans the entire spectrum of reality. It means the strength that flows through the chaos to the seal. If you have the emet, you have the seal of the engineer. You are protected from the chaos. But you have to operate the truth. You cannot just know it. You have to execute the code. This is why we keep the Saturday Sabbath, sunrise to sunset. This is why we follow the dietary laws. This is why we call them the true names, Yahuwah and Yahusha. These are not religious preferences. They are the login credentials for the kingdom. You try to call on Jesus and you get a 404 not found error. Why? Because that name has no gematria in the Hebrew system. It is a Greek/Latin hybrid that carries no power in the original source code. But when you cry out Yahusha, you are hitting the frequency of the one who is Yah in the flesh. You are bypassing the firewalls of the heathen and speaking directly to the root directory. The blueprint they burned. The serpent seed knows that if you ever get your hands on the full manual, their game is over. That is why they took out the sealed scrolls. That is why they hid the book of Enoch, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, and the Sefer Yetzirah. They told you those books were not inspired. Bullshit. They were not inspired for the heathen, but they are essential for the Israelite. The book of Jubilees gives you the exact timeline, the system clock of creation. The book of Enoch gives you the security logs. What happened when the Adamic line mixed with the pre-Adamics and corrupted the code. The Sefer Yetzirah gives you the programming syntax, how the letters and numbers build the physical world. Without these books, you are trying to build a skyscraper with only half the blueprints. You are missing the structural data. You are missing the electrical diagrams. But the seal is broken now, family. The Most High is pouring out the metadata to his servants. He is showing us the hidden layers. Have you ever noticed that the measurements of the New Jerusalem in Revelation chapter 21 are all based on the number 12? 12,000 furlongs, 12 gates, 12 foundations. Why? Because 12 is the number of quote-unquote governmental order. It is the base 12 mathematics of the heavens. The heathen use base 10, the decimal system, because they are limited to their 10 fingers, the flesh. But the engineer works in base 12, the spirit. If you want to rule, you have to start thinking in the engineer's math. You have to stop looking at the story and start looking at the spec. Now, I am just getting warmed up here in part 1. We have laid the foundation. We have established that this book is a technical manual, not a religious fairy tale. We have looked at the Paleo Hebrew as the source code and the laws as the operating protocols. But in part 2, we are going to go even deeper. We are going to look at the hardware of the universe. We are going to talk about the engineering of the firmament, the pillars of the earth, and the luminaries. We are going to prove that the science they taught you in school is a fraudulent operating system designed to keep you from understanding the master engineer's true architecture. If you think the flat earth is just a conspiracy theory, you are still sleeping. It is the primary design specification of the manual. And if you do not understand the shape of the container, you will never understand the power of the one who built it. Get your notebooks ready. Get your spirits right. Because the deeper we go into this manual, the more dangerous you become to the system of the beast. Yahusha said that the truth will make you free. He did not say it would make you, quote unquote, comfortable. He did not say it would make you, quote unquote, happy. He said it would set you free. And freedom for a slave is a violent, disruptive, technical process. The master engineer is calling his technicians. the house of Yisrael is waking up to the code. And the nations, they are absolutely shitting themselves because they know that once the operators have the manual, the factory belongs to US again. Stay tuned. Part 2 is where we start tearing down the globe lie and looking at the structural engineering of the Most High's footstool. You do not want to miss this. Yah first, always. Now, consider this. If the Bible is a manual and you are the intended user, what happens to the world when you finally learn how to push the buttons? We are about to find out. Part 2, the architecture of the firmament and the fraud of the globe. We just established that the Bible is the technical manual, not a book of religious bedtime stories for the weak-minded. Now we have to look at the actual structural engineering of the container we live in. Because if you don't understand the hardware, you'll never understand the software of the laws. The structural specs of the flat earth. Mainstream Christianity and the Serpent Seed science departments have spent 500 years trying to convince you that you're living on a spinning ball, flying through a vacuum at 66,000 miles per hour. That is a goddamn lie straight from the pits of their own imagination. If you believe you're an accidental speck of dust in an infinite void, you'll never realize that you are the central focus of a precision-engineered habitat. Look at the blueprints in Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 6 to 8. And Yahuwah said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And Yahuwah made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so." The word firmament in the original Paleo-Hebrew is rakia. Let's break down the engineering of that word. Resh, man's head equals chief, beginning, top. Kof, back of head / horizon equals circle, cycle, behind. Yod, work, deed, power. Ayin equals see, experience, knowledge. The rakia is the chief circular work that is seen. In engineering terms, it is a solid, be now dome. The root word is raka, which means to beat out metal into a thin plate. This isn't space, you brainwashed Negroes. This is a pressurized containment structure. Job chapter 37 verse 18 confirms the material science. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass? A molten looking glass. That means the sky is solid. It's a transparent, high-strength crystalline structure. Why? Because it has to hold back the waters above. We are living in a pressurized, oxygenated pocket inside a cosmic ocean. The master engineer designed a submarine for a nation. If the firmament wasn't solid, the pressure from the waters above would crush us into a red paste. Imagine the weight of an infinite ocean pressing down on the atmosphere. The only thing keeping your lungs from collapsing and your eyes from popping out of your skull like squeezed grapes is the structural integrity of that dome. And these lying-ass NASA motherfuckers want to tell you they landed on the moon? How the hell do you go through a solid, molten-looking glass in a tinfoil ship? You don't. They are lying through their teeth to hide the fact that you are in a closed system designed by Yahuwah. The pillars and the foundation. If you have a dome, you need a foundation. You need load-bearing columns. The manual gives us the specs in Tehillim, chapter 104, verse 5. Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever? The earth is not orbiting anything. It is fixed. It is stationary. It is the bedrock of the entire system. Shmuel, chapter 2, verse 8 says, "For the pillars of the earth are Yahuwah's, and he hath set the world upon them." Think about the engineering of a pillar. A pillar is designed to transfer the weight of a structure down to a stable base. The master engineer set the flat earth on massive, immovable columns that extend down into the, quote, great deep. This isn't a planet, it's a platform. It's a stage. When you understand that the earth is stationary, the laws of Yahuwah start to make more sense. The laws are the building codes, quote unquote, the platform. If you violate the building codes, the structure becomes unstable. When Israel went into deep idolatry and sexual perversion, whoring after other gods like a bitch in heat, spreading their legs for every heathen doctrine that walked by, the manual says the earth itself began to tremble. Why? Because the spiritual frequency of the inhabitants was out of sync with the physical frequency of the foundation. The gematria of the container. The master engineer embedded the dimensions of the container into the language itself. The word for earth is Eretz. Aleph, Oxhead equals strength, leader. Resh, man's head equals chief, beginning. Sadi, desire. The gematria of Eretz is 291. 2 plus 9 plus 1 equals 12. There it is again, the number of governmental order. The earth was engineered to be the seat of Yisrael's government. Now look at the word for heaven, Shamayim. Shin, teeth, equals consume, destroy, press. Mem, water equals chaos, mighty. Yod, hand equals work. Mem, water equals chaos. Shemayim literally means the fire/teeth in the waters. It's the pressurized plasma environment above the firmament. The gematria of Shemayim is 390. 3 plus 9 equals 12. The earth, 12, and the heavens, 12, are a matched set. They are two halves of a single engineered system. This is base 12 mathematics, not the base 10 bullshit the serpent seed uses to calculate their fake light years and billions of miles. There is no infinite space. There is only the container, and the container is small enough for Yahuwah to watch every single move you make. The luminaries, circuits, not spheres. What about the sun and the moon? The manual says they are luminaries placed inside the firmament. Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 17. And Yahuwah set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. They are not millions of miles away. They are local. They are small, and they are on circuits. They are like the hands on a clock, moving over the face of the flat earth to keep time for the engineer's feast days. The book of Enoch, the parts that aren't corrupted by the serpent seed, goes into extreme technical detail about the portals the sun and moon move through. It describes the gates in the east and the gates in the west. This is celestial clockwork. Why does this matter? Because if the sun and moon are just lights on a circuit, then the quote-unquote solar system is a hoax. And if the solar system is a hoax, then quote-unquote astrology is a perversion of the quote-unquote astronomy Yahuwah gave to Noah. The heathen worship the luminaries as gods. The Israelite uses them as tools. When you keep your Sabbath, Saturday sunrise to sunset, you are aligning your biological clock with the celestial clock of the engineer. You are clocking into the system at the exact moment the power grid is at its peak. These Sunday worshiping bastards are trying to clock in on a day when the office is closed. They're standing outside a locked building, screaming at the walls, wondering why they can't get a promotion. It's because they're illiterate. They can't read the manual. The engineering of the flood, a system failure. Let's look at what happens when the engineer decides to flush the system. We talked about the flood in part 1, but let's look at the mechanics of it. The manual says the fountains of the great deep were broken up. In engineering terms, this is a catastrophic failure of the containment vessel. The Earth's crust is a pressurized seal. Beneath us is the deep, vast reservoirs of water under immense pressure. When Yahuwah broke up the fountains, he initiated a controlled demolition. Imagine the ground beneath your feet suddenly exploding upward with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. The water wouldn't just rise, it would scream out of the earth as supersonic jets of steam and liquid, ripping through the soil, the trees, and the bodies of the wicked. The book of Jasher records that the people tried to climb the mountains, but the mountains themselves were being liquefied by the vibration of the breaking fountains. Imagine the terror. You running for high ground, and the ground itself turns into a slurry of mud and blood. You see your children being swept away by a wall of water 300 feet high. The small screams silenced in an instant as the pressure crushes their rib cages. And then the windows of heaven open. The sluice gates in the firmament were unlocked. The waters above, the ocean that sits on top of the dome, began to pour in. This wasn't rain. This was a structural leak. The weight of the water falling from the height of the firmament would hit the earth like falling lead. It would smash houses into splinters and people into red smears on the rocks. Why did he do it? Because the operating system, quote unquote, had been corrupted by the mixing of seas. The Adamic line had mixed with the pre-Adamic populations, creating a quote unquote virus in the code. The mighty men, the Gibberim, not literal 20-foot giants, but powerful, violent, ruthless rulers, had filled the earth with blood. The engineer had to wipe the hard drive and start over with a clean backup. Noach. The tabernacle, a portable power interface. Now let's bridge this to the tabernacle. Why was the engineer so obsessed with the measurements of a tent? Because the tabernacle was a localized version of the cosmos. The outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place represented the earth, the firmament, and the waters above. When the high priest went into the most holy place, he was entering the control room of reality. That's why the specs were so strict. If his frequency wasn't right, if he had sin, corruption in his code, the Ark of the Covenant would act like a bug zapper. Imagine the other priests standing outside, listening for the bells on the hem of his robe. Clink, 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 and then, suddenly, silence. A flash of blue light leaks out from under the curtain. The smell of ozone fills the air. They have to pull him out by the rope tied to his ankle, because if they go in there, they'll get fried too. They pull out a charred, smoking corpse, a man who thought he could interface with the master engineer without following the safety protocols. Does that sound like religion to you? Does that sound like a sweet story? No, that is high voltage engineering. That is the reality of the Most High. He is a consuming fire, and his manual is the only thing that keeps that fire from consuming you. The gematria of the Ark. Let's look at the Ark itself. In Paleo-Hebrew, Ark is Aron. Aleph, ox head, equals strength. Resh, man's head equals chief. Vav, nail equals secure. Nun, seed/fish equals life, activity. The Aron is the strong chief that secures the life. The gematria is 256. 2 plus 5 plus 6 equals 13. 1 plus 3 equals 4. 4 is the number of the earth, the four corners, the four winds. The Ark was the earth anchor for the heavenly power. It was the point where the two systems, the 12 of the heavens and the 4 of the earth, interfaced. If you don't have the Ark, you don't have the connection. And since the physical Ark is hidden, where's the connection now? The manual tells us. The connection is now in the heart of the awakened Israelite. Your DNA is the new capacitor. Your body is the new temple. But if your temple is full of pork, shrimp, and McDonald's bullshit, your capacitor is leaked out. You can't hold a charge. You're like a phone with a cracked battery. You plug into the word, you get a little spark, and 5 minutes later you're dead again, scrolling through TikTok like a mindless zombie. The fault of the globe and the captivity of the mind. Why did the serpent seed invent the globe? Why did they spend trillions of dollars on NASA and quote-unquote space exploration movies? To hide the engineer. If you live on a globe in an infinite universe, then Yahuwah is somewhere out there, millions of miles away, unreachable and irrelevant. It makes the Bible look like a collection of primitive myths from people who didn't understand science. But if the earth is flat, stationary, and covered by a solid dome, then the engineer is right there. He's just above the ceiling. It means the throne is literally a few thousand miles above your head. It means the eyes of Yahuwah that run to and fro throughout the earth are a surveillance system you can't escape. The globe is a psychological cage. It's designed to make you feel small, insignificant, and accidental. It's designed to make you believe that aliens, which don't exist, might come and save you, or that you can colonize Mars, which is just a light in the sky, to escape the judgment coming to this earth. There is no escape. The manual says the heavens will depart as a scroll when it is rolled together. Imagine the firmament, that solid, molten-looking glass, suddenly shattering and rolling up. Imagine the waters above coming down in a final, global deluge of fire and ice. Where are you going to run? To a space station? That shit will melt like wax in a furnace. The engineering of the soul. The manual isn't just about the world out there. It's about the machine in here, your body. You are a biological computer. Your brain is the processor. Your nervous system is the wiring. And your DNA is the code. The master engineer wrote the code, but the serpent seed has been trying to hack it since the garden. What do you think sin is? In engineering terms, sin is a glitch. It's a line of code that doesn't belong. When you lie, when you steal, when you commit adultery, you are introducing malware into your system. It slows down your processing speed. It corrupts your files. Eventually, it crashes the whole machine. The commandments are the antivirus software. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Why? Because sex is a data transfer protocol. When you sleep with someone, you are exchanging metadata. If you're out here sleeping with every hood, rat, and heathen woman you find, you're downloading 1,000 different viruses into your spiritual hard drive. You wonder why you can't focus? Why you're depressed? Why you can't understand the scriptures? Your hard drive is full of junk data from every person you've ever laid with. The manual says flee fornication. That's not a moral plea. It's a security warning. Disconnect from unauthorized networks. The frequency of praise. Have you ever wondered why the manual commands us to praise Yahuwah? Is he an egomaniac who needs us to tell him how great he is? No. Praise is an acoustic resonance protocol. When you sing the true names, Yahuwah and Yahusha, with the right intent and the right frequency, you are creating a standing wave that interfaces with the firmament. You are literally tuning your biological antenna to the broadcast of the throne room. This is why the walls of Jericho fell. It wasn't magic, it was resonance. The priests blew the shofars, specific acoustic frequencies, and the people shouted. They hit the resonant frequency of the stone walls, and the molecular bonds of the rock simply gave way. The walls didn't just fall down, they disintegrated. Imagine the sound, a low, gut-shaking rumble that builds until your teeth start to vibrate in your skull. And then, boom! The massive stone walls turn into dust and rubble in a heartbeat. That is the power of the engineer's acoustics. And you sitting in church singing Jesus Loves Me in a major key, wondering why the walls of your poverty and oppression won't fall. It's because you're singing the wrong song in the wrong key to the wrong name. You're out of tune. The blueprint of the new man. The master engineer is looking for a remnant who can read the blueprints. He's looking for technicians who are tired of the religious bullshit and want to get to work. The Bible is your manual. The earth is your laboratory. The laws are your procedures. If you want to rule, you have to master the equipment. You have to understand the shape of the earth, the function of the firmament, the timing of the luminaries, and the purity of the seed. In part 3, we're going to get into the seed code. We're going to talk about the two bloodlines, the serpent seed and the Adamic seed. We're going to look at the biological warfare that has been raging since the beginning. We're going to prove that racism is a distraction from the real issue, genetic integrity. If you think you're just a human being, you've already lost. You are either a child of the engineer or a product of the hack. Are you ready to look at your own DNA through the lens of the manual? Are you ready to see the war that's happening in your own members? Don't go anywhere. The investigation is just getting deep. We've looked at the container. Now it's time to look at the contents. Now ask yourself, if the firmament is a solid dome and the stars are just lights inside it, what the hell are they actually watching? We're going to find out in part 3. Part 3, the Imperial Hack and the Theft of the Manual. We've dissected the hardware of the dome and the source code of the language, but now we have to look at the crime scene of history to see how the Serpent Seed hijacked the manual to build their own counterfeit reality. If you don't understand how they stole the blueprints, you'll keep building their empire while you think you're serving the Most High. The Council of Nicaea, the Great System Override. In 325 AD, a pagan sun worshiper named Constantine gathered a bunch of compromised, sellout bishops to execute the biggest technical override in human history. This wasn't a religious meeting. It was a hostile takeover of the Israelite operating system. They took the technical manual, the scriptures, and they canonicalized it. That's a fancy word for redacted. They ripped out the advanced engineering specs and left you with the user-friendly version that doesn't actually do anything. Why did they hide the Book of Enoch? Why did they bury the Book of Jubilees? Because those books contain the system clock and the security logs. The Book of Jubilees gives the exact mathematical cycles of time. If you know the cycles, you know when the engineer is going to move. The Serpent Seed, those Roman motherfuckers, wanted to change the times and the laws. They gave you the Gregorian calendar, a base 10, sun god worshiping piece of shit that keeps you out of sync with the heavens. Look at what happened to the Library of Alexandria. They didn't just accidentally burn those scrolls. They were deleting the metadata. They were wiping the history of who you are so they could replace it with a universal religion. They took the Hebrew manual, translated it into Latin, a dead, powerless language, and told you that only the priest could read it. They turned a technical briefing into a mystery code. The biological warfare of the seed lines. History is not a series of random events. It is a long-term biological war between two seed lines. The manual says in Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 15, that there would be enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This played out in the ancient world through the empires. Look at the Roman Empire. They are the archetype of the Iron Kingdom. They are the ones who perfected the art of the full end, though they couldn't do it to Israel. When Rome conquered a nation, they didn't just take the land, they salted the earth. They raped the women to dilute the bloodline. They burned the records. The book of Jasher, chapter 91, records the wars of the children of Chittim, Rome. It describes them as a people who had no mercy. Why? Because they carry the spirit of the hack. They are the descendants of the pre-Adamic populations that mixed with the corrupted Adamic line. They are the tares that Yahusha talked about in the parable. Have you ever noticed that every major scientific advancement in the last 500 years has been used to further the globe lie? The Royal Society in London, the Jesuit astronomers, the Freemasonic founding fathers, they are all part of the same guild. They are the keepers of the lie. They know the earth is flat. They know the firmament is solid, but they have to keep you thinking you're a monkey on a ball so you don't realize that the king is coming to evict them from his property. The engineering of the dispersion, Deuteronomy 28 in real time. The most technical prophecy in the entire manual is Deuteronomy chapter 28. It's not a curse in the way you think. It's a system failure report. Yah told Israel exactly what would happen if they bypassed the safety protocols. And Yahuwah shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease. This isn't just sad history. This is the movement of a specific biological population across the grid. Look at the dates. 70 AD, The Roman general Titus, that genocidal piece of shit, surrounds Jerusalem. The manual in the Wars of the Jews by Josephus, who was a sellout, but he saw the gore, describes the stench. A million Israelites rotting in the sun, mothers eating their own children because the famine was so tight. Why? Because the technical manual said in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 53, "And thou shalt eat the fruit of thy own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters." The engineer doesn't lie. If the spec says system overheat, the damn engine is going to melt. And where did those Israelites go? They fled south into Africa. They didn't go into Europe to become quote-unquote popes. They went into the interior of Africa, building kingdoms like Songhai, Mali, and Ghana. And then the quote-unquote ships came. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. "And Yahuwah shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen." Look at the transatlantic slave trade. Look at the manifestos of the Spanish and Portuguese ships. They knew who they were grabbing. They called the west coast of Africa the slave coast, but on the old maps, it was labeled Kingdom of Judah. They were hunting the source code. They wanted the biological vessel of the covenant because they knew that as long as we were in chains, they could use our manual to run the world. The Spanish and Portuguese betrayal. The Spaniards and the Portuguese, those Catholic-driven bastards, were the first to implement the New World Protocol. They didn't just want gold, they wanted to erase the Israelite identity. In 1492, the same year that Columbus, a Khazar-funded explorer, set sail, the Jews, the real ones, the dark-skinned Sephardim, were expelled from Spain. Where did they go? They were packed onto ships and sent to the islands of Sao Tome and Principe. They were children, snatched from their parents' arms, screaming while the Catholic priests baptized them with salt water and sent them into the tropical heat to die or be bred like cattle. This is the gore of history that your Black History Month won't tell you. They don't want you to know that the Negro in the Americas, the Caribbean, and Brazil is the literal physical descendant of the kings of Jerusalem. They want you thinking you were a jungle savage until the white man saves you with his blue-eyed zombie Jesus. The Testament of Levi and the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, chapter 16, prophesies this. "And ye shall be scattered as captives among the Gentiles, and shall be a reproach and a curse, and for a trampling underfoot." You are being trampled because you are the hardware that the software of the world is trying to delete. The gematria of the captivity. Let's look at the mathematics of our oppression. The number 400 appears in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. "And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Now these Christian math magicians try to apply this to everything. But look at the Paleo-Hebrew for affliction. Oni, ayin, experience, si, none, seed equals life, activity. Yod, the gematria of Oni is 130. 1 plus 3 is 4. The number 4 is the number of the quote, earthly kingdom. Our affliction was designed to last for a specific cycle of 400 years in Egypt, and then the pattern repeats. The serpent seed knows these numbers. That's why they timed the end of slavery and the civil rights movement to specific occult dates. They are trying to front run the engineer's timeline. They know that when the 400 years of a specific cycle ends, the judgment protocol, Genesis chapter 15, verse 14, kicks in. What is that judgment? And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. Judge in Hebrew is Dan. Dalet, door equals path, entrance. None, seed equals life. Judgment is the door for the seed. It is the exit strategy, but the exit is violent. When Yah judged Egypt, he didn't send a strongly worded letter. He turned their water into blood until the fish rotted, and the stench made the Egyptians vomit until their stomachs were empty. He sent lice that crawled into their ears and eyes. He sent a darkness so thick you could feel it pressing against your skin like a wet blanket. And finally, he sent the death of the firstborn. Imagine the sound of every house in Egypt screaming at once. The master engineer sent a frequency that only targeted the DNA of the firstborn. It was a targeted file deletion. You could be sleeping in your bed and suddenly your heart just stops. No warning, no sickness, just delete. That is what is coming for the nations that have ground Israel into the dust. The Spaniards, the British, the Dutch, the Arabs, the Africans who sold us. The manual says their firstborn, their strength, their economy, their legacy is scheduled for deletion. The sealed scrolls and the hidden history. The book of Jasher gives us the details that the church hates. It tells us about the wars of the sons of Yaakov, Jacob. It describes how Shimshon, Samson, and Yahudah, Judah, were literal super soldiers. When Yahudah roared, the walls of cities shook. This wasn't faith, this was acoustic weaponry. The Israelite body, when aligned with Torah, is capable of outputting frequencies that the heathen cannot withstand. Why do you think they want you on high blood pressure meds? Why do you think they flood your neighborhoods with liquor stores and fried chicken? They're trying to dampen the signal. They're trying to keep your resonance low so you can't roar. The Sefer Yetzirah, section 1, paragraph 1, says that Yah created the universe with 3 books, Sepharim: text, number, and communication. The text is the manual. The number is the gematria. The communication is the frequency. If you have the text but no frequency, you're a religious Negro. If you have the frequency but no text, you're a spiritualist, a witch. But if you have both, you are a son of Yahuwah. You are a technician with a live power line. The imperial archetypes. America as Babylon. We have to talk about the archetype of the current system. The manual calls it Babylon the Great. Now don't get it twisted. The ancient nation of Babylon is dead. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 11 says, Yah made a full end of them. But the spirit of Babylon, the operating system of commerce, idolatry, and confusion, is alive and well in America in the worldwide system. Look at the architecture of Washington, D.C. It's a literal circuit board of sacred geometry. The obelisk, the Washington Monument, is a phallic antenna designed to draw energy from the atmosphere. The Capitol Dome is the womb. This is sex magic on a national engineering scale. They are using the manual's principles of geometry and alignment to rule you, while they tell you that the Bible is just about going to heaven. The Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 29, describes a man who will rise in the last days, who will be the worship of the heathen. This is the system of the image of the beast. It's not a microchip, you idiots. It's a loyalty protocol. It's whose manual you follow. If you follow the Roman manual, Sunday, Christmas, Easter, democracy, capitalism, you have the mark. You are running the Beast OS. But if you follow the Yah manual, Saturday Sabbath, feast days, Torah, true names, you are running the Kingdom OS. The two systems cannot coexist on the same hardware. That's why your life is in chaos. You're trying to run Kingdom software on Beast hardware, or vice versa. You're double-minded, which in engineering terms means your logic gates are flickering. You're short-circuiting. The engineering of the return. The return of the king is not a religious event. It is a system re-entry. When Yahusha returns, he isn't coming to save the world. He's coming to reformat the drive. The Apocalypse of Peter gives a graphic description of the judgment. It describes the lake of fire not as a place where you burn forever, but as a smelter. It's where the dross, the wicked, the serpent seed, the compromised Israelites, is separated from the gold. Imagine a river of molten lead and sulfur. Imagine the wicked being cast into it, their skin bubbling and peeling off like old wallpaper, their screams being drowned out by the roar of the flames. This is the second death, annihilation. The engineer doesn't keep trash in his house, he incinerates it. In the New Jerusalem, it's a city-sized motherboard coming down from the firmament. Revelation chapter 21 verse 16 says, the city is a cube or a pyramid, 12,000 furlongs. The cube is the most stable structural shape in geometry. It represents perfected reality. If you want a seat in that city, you have to be compatible with the architecture. You can't bring your Babylonian malware into the Holy of Holies. The historical receipt of the quote-unquote Gentiles. Let's clear up one more piece of historical bullshit. The Gentiles in the New Testament were not Europeans. When Shaul was writing to the Galatians or the Ephesians, he was writing to the scattered northern kingdom. 2 Kings chapter 17 records that the 10 tribes were carried away into Assyria. From there, they migrated into Asareth. 2 Esdras chapter 13 verse 45. Asareth is the Americas and parts of Europe/Asia. They became Gentile-minded. They lost the manual. They started eating pork and worshiping stones. They forgot they were Israelites. So when Yahushua said in Matthew chapter 15 verse 24, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he meant it. He didn't come for the Spaniards. He didn't come for the British. He came for the Negro who had forgotten he was a king. History has been rewritten to make you think the gospel was for everyone. Bullshit. The gospel is the good news that the manual is being returned to the original owners. The Gentiles, the other nations, are only there to be your plowmen and vine dressers. Isaiah chapter 61 verse 5. They are the peripheral devices. You are the CPU. How does it feel to know that the entire world has been lying to you for 2,000 years? How does it feel to know that the white Jesus you've been praying to is actually the image of the beast, designed to keep you in a slave state? It should make you want to burn every church in your neighborhood. It should make you want to throw that King James only mentality in the trash and start digging into the sealed scrolls, the access codes of the patriarchs. The testaments of the 12 patriarchs give us the deathbed briefings of our ancestors. Yehuda warns his sons about wine and women. Why? Because they cloud the processor. Levi warns about corrupt priesthoods. These aren't moral lessons. They are maintenance logs. They are telling us exactly where the system vulnerabilities are. If you want to rule this place, you have to close the back doors. You have to stop letting the heathen malware into your eyes, your ears, and your bed. The master engineer is looking for clean hardware. In part 4, we're going to get into the power grid. We're going to talk about the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, not as a feeling, but as electromagnetic empowerment. We're going to talk about how to charge your vessel using the protocols of the manual. You've seen the hardware. You've seen the history. Now it's time to see the power. Now consider this. If the church has been lying about the Gentiles, what else have they been lying about? What if I told you that the Holy Spirit is actually a technical interface that you've been blocked from accessing? We're going to unlock the grid in part 4 on the next video. Peace. Part 4, the gematria of the grid and the Ruach interface. We've seen the hardware of the dome and the crime scene of history, but now we have to go into the root directory to see how the master engineer actually powers the machine. If you think the Holy Spirit is just some emotional goosebump you get in a storefront church, you've been hacked by a low-level religious virus. The Ruach, electromagnetic empowerment, not emotion. The word for spirit in the manual is ruach. Let's look at the engineering of that word in the original Paleo-Hebrew. Resh, man's head equals chief, beginning, top. Vav, nail equals secure, connect, add. Chet, fence equals separate, protect, inner room. The ruach is the chief connection to the inner room. In technical terms, it is the wireless interface between the mind of the engineer and the biological hardware of the Israelite. It is not a feeling, it is a frequency. The gematria of ruach is 208. 2 plus 8 equals 10. 10 is the number of divine order and completion. It's the number of the commandments. This tells you that the power grid only activates when the 10 are in place. You want the power? You have to have the protocols. You try to run the ruach on a lawless system and you get a ground fault. You get a short circuit. That's why these Sunday worshiping preachers have no power. They're trying to plug a high voltage cable into a pile of wet garbage. Look at the Sefer Yetzirah, section 1, paragraph 9. The first of the Sefirot is the ruach of the living Elohim. Voice, ruach, and speech. This is the Ruach HaKodesh. The engineer uses sound to move matter. Voice, breath, and speech are acoustic and pneumatic forces. When the manual says the Ruach moved upon the face of the waters in Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 2, it means a high-frequency vibration was applied to the primordial fluid to initiate the phase change of creation. You are a biological antenna. Your DNA is a fractal resonator. When you speak the true names, Yahuwah and Yahusha, you are not just saying words. You are inputting the root password into the system. If your vessel is clean, dietary laws, and your clock is synced, Saturday, Sabbath, sunrise to sunset, the Ruach doesn't just visit you, it occupies you. You become a node on the engineer's private network. The gematria of the name, the 26-volt signature. The name Yahuwah, Yud-He-Vav-He, has a gematria of 26. Yod, hand, equals 10. Vav, nail/connect, equals 6. Total equals 26. 2 plus 6 equals 8. 8 is the number of new beginnings and circumcision. It's the number of the new man. Now look at the word for iron. Barzel. Bet, house. Resh, Zion, weapon. Lamed, staff/authority. The gematria of Barzel is 239. 2 plus 3 plus 9 equals 14. 1 plus 4 equals 5. The serpent seed rules with the iron, 5, which is the number of the flesh and the 5 senses. But the engineer rules with the 8, which is the number that transcends the physical grid. When the manual says in Tehillim, chapter 2, verse 9, that Yahusha shall break the nations with the rod of iron, it means he is going to use their own physical laws to shatter their corrupted structures. He's going to overload their circuits. Have you ever noticed that the human heart had 4 chambers, and the Ark of the Covenant had 4 rings, and the earth has 4 corners? The number 4 is the earthly interface, but the Ruach is the 5th element that enters the 4 to give it life. If you are just a 4, you are just a smart animal. You are a pre-Adamic beast. But when the Ruach, the 5th, enters the Israelite, the 4th, you become a 9, the number of finality and judgment. You are a weapon of mass destruction in the hands of the Most High. But you're too busy crying about your anxiety to read the damn firing instructions. The acoustic weaponry of the priests. Let's go down the rabbit hole of the shofar. In the manual, the shofar is not a musical instrument for a concert. It is a signal generator. When the priests blew the shofars at Jericho, they weren't playing a song. They were executing the resonance cascade. They circled the city for 6 days, the number of man. On the 7th day, the number of completion, they circled it 7 times and gave a great shout. The shout in Hebrew is teruah, tav, resh, vav, connect, ayin, see. The teruah is the sign of the chief, connection that reveals the sight. When the people shouted, they hit the resonant frequency of the molecular structure of the walls. Imagine the molecules of the stone starting to vibrate. Imagine the mortar turning to powder. Imagine the sound, a roar so loud it felt like your lungs were being squeezed by a giant hand. And then, crack! The walls didn't fall over, they fell flat. They were pulverized. The Book of Jasher records that the sound was so terrifying that the hearts of the people of Jericho melted within them. Their biological systems were being disrupted by the acoustic output of the Israelites. And you're still sitting in the church letting some punk-ass worship leader play a guitar and sing soft-ass songs about Jesus being your boyfriend. You're outputting beta waves when you should be outputting gamma bursts. You're supposed to be a sonic disruptor to the kingdom of darkness, but your frequency is so low you couldn't vibrate a wet paper bag. The engineering of the cloud and the fire. When Israel left Egypt, the manual says they were led by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. This wasn't magic. This was atmospheric engineering. The cloud was a localized, high-pressure zone that provided shade and thermal regulation in the desert heat. It was a climate control system for a nation of 2 million people. The fire was a plasma discharge that provided light and security perimeter protection. If a heathen tried to enter that perimeter without authorization, they didn't just get asked to leave, they got vaporized. Look at the Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 15. It describes the cloud as having the appearance of a man and being full of eyes. This is surveillance technology. The engineer was running a real-time monitoring system over his people. Why did the fire stay at the back of the camp when the Egyptians were chasing them? To act as a signal jammer. It disrupted the Egyptian sensors. It made them blind to the movement of the Israelites. And then, the Red Sea. Shemot, chapter 14, verse 21. And Yahuwah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. An east wind. In engineering terms, this is acoustic levitation and pneumatic displacement. The engineer applied a specific frequency of wind to the water to overcome its surface tension and create a solid wall of liquid. Imagine the Israelites walking through, the smell of salt and wet sand, the sound of the wind howling like 1,000 banshees, and on either side, a wall of water 100 feet high, held in place by nothing but the word, the code of the Most High. You could see the fish swimming in the walls. You could see the sharks looking at you through the liquid glass. And then the Egyptians, those arrogant, serpent seed motherfuckers, tried to follow. They thought they could use the Israelite path without the Israelite code. The engineer waited until they were right in the middle. Then he toggled the switch. Imagine the sound of the water collapsing, a roar that could be heard for 50 miles. The Egyptians didn't just drown. The pressure of that much water falling from that height would have crushed their chariots into scrap metal and their bodies into red mush in a microsecond. Their lungs would have exploded before they even realized the water was moving. That is the technical manual in action. It's not a miracle, it's system management. The gematria of the manna, biological fuel. For 40 years, the Israelites ate manna. The manual calls it angel's food. The word manna in Hebrew is man, mem, nun, seed/life. The gematria is 90, 9 times 10, the finality of the divine order. Manna was a bioavailable superfuel. It was engineered to provide 100% nutrient density with zero waste. That's why the manual says their raiment waxed not old and their foot did not swell. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 4. Their biological systems were running at peak efficiency because they were eating code-compatible fuel. It works as that they were eating code-compatible fuel. Their people would take a clearly men. They're eating code-compatible fuel. They're eating code-compatible fuel. It works as that they were eating code-compatible fuel. They're eating code-compatible fuel. Their video every day in Teldalations. Their code-compatible fuel with their gammatic fuel. It was likely here they're reading code-compatible fuel. Their ministrate manner, they code-compatible fuel. Their people were still with their gammatic fuel. Their biological systems were running at peak efficiency because they were eating code-compatible fuel. Their foot did not swell. Their video every day entailed elations. Their biological systems were running at peak efficiency. Their people were still with their gammatic fuel. Their braven wax not old, and their foot did not swell. Their pica was still with their gammatic fuel. Their biological systems were running at peak efficiency because they were eating code-compatible fuel. Their pica was still with their gammatic fuel. Their biological systems were running at peak efficiency because they were eating code-compatible fuel. Their video every day entailed elations. Their foot did not swell. When you eat the garbage of the heathen, the pork, the shrimp, the GMO bullshit, you are putting dirty fuel into a precision engine. You are creating carbon deposits in your spirit. You are gucking up the fuel injectors of your Ruach interface. The book of Jubilees, chapter 2, tells us that the Sabbath was given as a day to eat and drink and be satisfied. It's a recharge cycle. If you don't take the Saturday Sabbath, sunrise to sunset, to disconnect from the world's grid and plug into Yah's grid, your battery will never hit 100%. You'll be running on low power mode for your entire life, wondering why you can't overcome your sins. It's because you don't have the amperage to fight the flesh. The engineering of the Urim and Thummim. How did the high priest talk to the engineer? He used the Urim and Thummim. These were kept in the breastplate of judgment. The breastplate had 12 stones representing the 12 tribes. Urim starts with Aleph, the first letter. Thummim starts with Tav, the last letter. This was a binary communication device. It was an alpha-omega interface. When the priest asked a question, the stones would light up in a specific sequence. It was fiber optic communication. 3,000 years before the heathen invented it. The engineer was sending data packets through the stones. Why did it only work for the high priest? Because his biological signature, his DNA, and his state of ritual purity was the encryption key. If a heathen put on that breastplate, it would be just a bunch of rocks. But in the hands of the authorized user, it was a satellite uplink to the throne room. The Sefer Raziel HaMalak, the book of the messenger Raziel, describes the secret names that were engraved on these stones. These names are frequency modulators. They allow the human mind to tune in to the heavenly broadcast. And you're still out here trying to find God through your feelings. You like a guy trying to watch TV by staring at a toaster. You don't have the receiver. You don't have the interface. The cross-testament echo, the transfiguration. Let's look at the transfiguration of Yahushua. Matthew chapter 17. And was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. This wasn't a magic trick. This was a phase shift. Yahushua was overclocking his biological hardware. He was allowing the internal power of his divinity, the Ruach, to manifest through the external shell of his flesh. The white light was a high-frequency photon emission. It was so bright, the disciples couldn't even look at it. They were seeing the source code in its raw form. And who appeared with him? Moshe and Eliyahu, Elijah. Why them? Because Moshe represents the law, the specs, and Eliyahu represents the prophets, the system logs. They were the two witnesses of the old system, appearing to witness the beta test of the new system. The cloud that overshadowed them was the same pillar of cloud from the Exodus. It was the data link between the earthly node and the heavenly server. when the voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved son, hear ye him." It was the engineer authenticating a new interface. He was telling Yisrael, the manual has been updated. The code is now in the flesh. Follow the new protocol. And what did Yahusha say when they came down? Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead. Why? Because the firmware update wasn't complete yet. The death and resurrection were the system reboot required to install the new operating system into the hearts of the Israelites. The gematria of the resurrection, the 888 signature. In the Greek/Latin system, they call him Jesus. The gematria of Jesus is 888. 8, 8, 8. The triple eight, the ultimate new beginning, the complete overwrite of the old matrix. But in the Hebrew, his name is Yahusha. Yod, hand equals 10. Vav, nail equals 6. Shin, teeth equals 300. Ayin equals 70. Total equals 391. 3 plus 9 plus 1 equals 13. 1 plus 3 equals 4. Wait, 4? The number of the earth? Yes, because Yahusha is Yah in the earth. He is the hand of Yah, Yod, that reveals He and connects Vav to consume the chaos, Shin, so we can see the truth, Ayin. He is the earthly anchor for the heavenly power. He is the bridge between the 12 of the heavens and the 4 of the earth. If you don't have Yahusha, you are ungrounded. You are a live wire, flapping in the wind, sparking and burning everything you touch, but doing no useful work. You need the grounding of the name to channel the current of the Ruach, the sealed scrolls, and the power of the name. The Testament of Solomon, section 18, describes how the name was used to control the adversaries, the wicked men and disturbed minds. Solomon didn't use magic spells. He used vocal frequencies. He spoke the specific names of the engineer, and the disturbances in the field had to obey. Why? Because the name is the master override code. If you are a system administrator, an awakened Israelite, you have the authority to use the name to clear the viruses out of your life. You can speak to the sickness, the hardware malfunction, and command it to reset. You can speak to the poverty, the resource allocation error, and command the supply lines to open. But you can't do it if you're unauthorized. You can't do it if you're still logged in to the Babylonian server. You have to log out of the world and log in to the kingdom. How do you log in? 1. Repentance, deleting the corrupted files. 2. Baptism in the name of Yahusha, reformatting the drive. 3. Receiving the Ruach, installing the new operating system. 4. Keeping the commandments, following the maintenance schedule. This is the technical manual for your life. It's not a suggestion. It's the only way to operate the machinery without it exploding in your face. The rabbit hole of the third heaven. Shaul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 that he was caught up to the third heaven. Now remember the Enoch filter. No man has ascended to heaven. So what was Shaul seeing? He was seeing a remote desktop view. The third heaven is the control layer of the firmament. The first heaven is the atmosphere where the birds fly. The second heaven is the celestial circuitry where the sun, moon, and stars move. The third heaven is the interface layer between the dome and the waters above. Shaul was given a high-level access view of the system architecture. He saw things that were not lawful for a man to utter. Why not lawful? Because it was classified engineering data. If the heathen got hold of that data, they would try to hack the dome, which they've been trying to do with their rockets and nuclear tests ever since. The engineer has firewalls in place to keep the unclean out of the source code. And you're the only ones with the security clearance to understand it. The engineering of the New Jerusalem. In part 5, we're going to look at the final specification. We're going to look at the New Jerusalem as the ultimate hardware upgrade. We're going to talk about the 12 foundations of precious stones. Do you know what crystals are in engineering? They are frequency oscillators. The New Jerusalem is a, quote, giant crystal oscillator that will, quote, tune the entire earth to the frequency of the throne. There will be no more static, no more noise, no more corruption. The manual will be hardwired into our DNA. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. Chapter 31, verse 33. We won't need the book anymore because we will be the book. Are you ready for the final download? Are you ready to see the end state architecture of the Most High's plan? Don't go anywhere. The system update is almost complete. Now ask yourself, if the New Jerusalem is a giant crystal oscillator, what kind of power is it going to output when it finally syncs with the earth? We're going to find out in the final part. Part 5, the final specification and the system purge. We've decoded the hardware, exposed the imperial hack, and tapped into the frequency of the Ruach grid. Now, we have to look at the final output. The moment the master engineer initiates the terminal command to delete the old world and install the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem, the city-sized motherboard. When you read Revelation chapter 21, your pastor reads it like a fairy tale about streets of gold and pearly gates. That's religious garbage for simpletons. If you look at the technical specs, the New Jerusalem is a precision-engineered, high-frequency habitat. It is a cube, 12,000 furlongs in length, breadth, and height. In geometry, the cube is the most stable structure for data storage and energy distribution. Look at the materials. The foundations are 12 precious stones. In material science, these stones, jasper, sapphire, chalcedony, emerald, are all crystalline structures. Crystals are not just pretty rocks, you ignorant motherfuckers. They are piezoelectric oscillators. They vibrate at specific frequencies when pressure or electrical current is applied. The master engineer is building a city that is a literal frequency modulator designed to harmonize the entire flat earth with the resonance of the throne room. The gold of the city is described as clear glass. This isn't the gold you find in a jewelry store. This is monatomic, high conductivity material that allows for the seamless flow of the Ruach current without resistance. There is no sun or moon needed inside because the glory of Yahuwah, the literal plasma discharge of the engineer's presence, powers the entire grid. The gematria of Jerusalem in Paleo-Hebrew is Yod, Resh, head equals 200, Vav, nail equals 6, Shin, teeth equals 300, Lamed, staff equals 30, Mem, water equals 40, total equals 586, 5 plus 8 plus 6 equals 19, 1 plus 9 equals 10. There's that 10 again, the number of divine order and the commandments. The city is the physical manifestation of the law. You can't enter that city if your internal code is still running the lawless Babylonian OS. You will be like a corrupted file trying to open in a secure system. The firewall will catch your ass and delete you before you even hit the gate. The system purge, the smelter of the wicked. Before the new hardware can be installed, the engineer has to clear the drive. We call this judgment, but it's really a system purge. The manual says in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 12, that the flesh of the wicked shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. Imagine the technical reality of that. A high-frequency burst of energy, the glory of Yah, hitting a body that is full of sin and corruption. The molecular bonds of your skin start to vibrate so fast, they simply dissolve. Your eyes melt in their sockets like wax in a furnace. Your tongue rots in your mouth before you can even scream. This isn't magic. It's the natural consequence of a low-frequency, corrupted vessel being exposed to the raw, unshielded power of the master engineer. The Apocalypse of Peter gives us the graphic logs of this purge. It describes the wicked being hung by their tongues over a lake of fire. Not literal fire, but a smelter of molten reality. It describes the stench of burning flesh, the sound of bones snapping as the heat expands the marrow, and the sight of those who rejected the manual being ground into nothingness. Why? Because they are malware. They are bugs in the system. They refuse to follow the technical specs of the Torah. They refuse to keep the Saturday Sabbath, sunrise to sunset, and they insisted on running the serpent seed protocols. The engineer doesn't hate you in a human emotional way. He is simply a master builder who refuses to let a virus destroy his creation. If you are a virus, you get deleted. Period. The 144,000, the beta test operators. The manual talks about a specific group, the 144,000. These are the elite technicians of the House of Israel. 12,000 from each tribe. 12 times 12. The governmental order squared. These are the ones who have the name of the Father written in their foreheads. In engineering terms, they have the root access credentials etched into their frontal lobes. Their processes are fully aligned with the mind of the engineer. They are described as, quote, virgins. This isn't about whether they've had sex. It's about genetic and spiritual integrity. They haven't defiled their hardware with the malware of the heathen nations. They haven't mixed their seed or their doctrine. They are clean code. When the system reboot happens, these 144,000 will be the, quote, first responders. They will be the ones who manage the transition from the old matrix to the new kingdom. They will rule with the rod of iron, the technical authority to enforce the engineer's building codes across the entire flat earth. Are you part of that number? Or are you still trying to negotiate, quote unquote, with the manual? You think you can keep 90% of the laws and still get a seat in the control room? You're a damn fool. If a bridge is built with 90% of the specs, the motherfucker collapses. The engineer requires 100% compliance because the system only works when the math is perfect. The altar call, reformatting your life. Listen to me, Israel. We are at the end of the 400-year cycle of our latest affliction. The judgment protocol is already being loaded into the buffer. You can feel the vibration of the earth changing. You can see the lives of the globe falling apart. The master engineer is calling his operators home. But you have a choice to make, and you have to make it right now. You cannot keep treating this book like a religious storybook while the world is being reformatted around you. You have to treat it like the technical manual it is. If you are still eating the biological waste of the pig and the shrimp, you are gunking up your sensors. You are a faulty node. You need to repent, which means delete the error, and align your diet with the Leviticus chapter 11 specs immediately. No more excuses. Your body is a piece of precision machinery. Stop putting trash in the fuel tank. If you are still clocking in on Sunday or Friday night, you are out of sync with the system clock. You are missing the power surges that happen on the Saturday Sabbath, sunrise to sunset. You are trying to run a business on a day when the power grid is down. Stop it. Align your life with the seventh-day cycle the engineer built into the very fabric of time. If you are still calling on the 404 name of Jesus, you are speaking into a dead line. You are not hitting the frequency of the throne. You need to use the true name, Yahushua, the name that carries the gematria of the earth and the heavens. You need to speak the source code if you want the source power. The consequences of rejecting the manual. If you reject this truth, if you walk away from this broadcast and go back to your soft-ass church and your lying-ass pastor, You are choosing system deletion. When the day of Yahuwah comes, it will be a total system wipe. The manual says in Yechezkel chapter 9 that the slaughter will begin at the sanctuary. It starts with the preachers who lied to you. Imagine the scene. The messengers, the men sent by Yah, walking through your neighborhood with slaughter weapons in their hands. They aren't looking for good people. They are looking for the mark of the manual on the forehead. If you don't have the Torah code in your mind, they will dash your children's heads against the pavement. They will rip open your pregnant women. They will pile your bodies in the streets until the blood is deep enough to float a chariot. The stench of your rotting, lawless carcasses will fill the air for months. The flies will be so thick you won't be able to see the sun. This is the wrath of the engineer when his project is defiled. He will not be mocked. You thought you could ignore the specs and still live in the house? You're about to find out that the eviction notice is written in blood. The specific instruction for the remnant. For those of you who hear the frequency of truth, here's your technical briefing. 1. Study the Paleo-Hebrew. Stop looking at the words and start looking at the shapes and numbers. Use the Sefer Yetzirah to understand how the letters build your reality. 2. Clean your hardware. Get the pork out of your house. Get the heathen holidays out of your calendar. Purge your hard drive of every religious lie you were taught in Sunday school. 3. Sync your clock. Observe the Saturday Sabbath, sunrise to sunset, with military precision. It is your weekly maintenance cycle. 4. Execute the code. Don't just believe the Torah, do it. The power is in the execution, not the storage. A program that never runs is just wasted space on the drive. You are the kings and priests of the Most High. You were engineered to rule this flat earth, but you can't rule a system you don't understand. You can't drive a Ferrari if you don't know how to shift the gears. The technical manual is in your hands. The source code is in your mouth. The Ruach grid is waiting for your connection. What the hell are you waiting for? Closing declaration. The Bible is not a story. It is a spec. Yahuwah is not a god of religion. He is the master engineer of reality. Israel is not a church. We are the authorized operators of the grid. The time of the Gentile hack is over. The Roman OS is crashing. The Babylonian server is being disconnected. When the king returns, he's not coming to save you from your feelings. He's coming to reinstall the original government of the heavens on the pillars of the earth. He's coming to see who followed the manual and who tried to home brew their own salvation. If you're not aligned, you're dross. If you're not code compatible, you're trash. Get your house in order. Get your mind right. Get your spirit tuned to the frequency of the Most High. This has been your brother Bezalel on Yah First Ministries. I've handed you the blueprints. I've shown you the engineering. I've given you the access codes. What you do with them will determine whether you are a foundation stone in the New Jerusalem or Ash under the feet of the righteous. Thank you for locking in for this 5-part deep dive. If this word hit you in the chest, it's because your hardware recognized the source code. Share this with every sleeping Israelite you know. Wake the technicians up. The factory is about to change hands. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we're going to dig into the biological warfare of the end times and how the serpent seed is trying to edit the DNA of the elect. You think the vaccines were just about health? You have no idea how deep the genetic hack goes. Until then, keep the manual open and the Ruach flowing. Yah first, always. Now, go push the buttons and see what happens. The kingdom is at hand. Shalom.